Hi, I'm Parneet Jaggi. And in the series on literary terms, we are going to be talking on symbolism in the first place. Symbolism is a very common literary device used in literature to express certain things that we'll be talking about in detail. So let's see, what is symbolism? Symbolism is defined as the use of symbols to signify ideas and qualities by giving them symbolic meanings that are different from their literal sense. Now, a word literally may be meaning something else, for example, a flower, but symbolically it is used to denote certain other qualities that are implied, that we want to show through that word flower. We may want to show beauty, we may want to show colorfulness or softness or fragrance, anything through the use of a symbol. Now, what forms it can take? Symbolism can take different forms. It is not just that it is used in just one kind of usage. It can take different forms, and generally, it is an object representing another to give an entirely different meaning, which is much deeper, more useful, more significant. Sometimes, however, an action, an event, or a word spoken by someone may have a symbolic value. For example, we have an object which represents the other object, but we may have an action also. For example, smile. Smile is an act, but it is a symbol of friendship. It is also a symbol of happiness. It is also a symbol of love. So, similarly, this action of someone smiling at you may stand as a symbol of the feeling of affection, love, which that person has for you. So, it is not just the use of objects that are used as symbols, but we may also use actions, events, or any general word spoken by someone. Now, symbols do shift their meanings also depending on the context they are used in. We may have one symbol meaning something else in one context and the same symbol meaning something else in the other place or in the other context. For example, a chain. A chain may stand for union. We may hold hands, 10 students may hold hands and form a chain. Now, this is a chain of unity, union, friendship, or team, but we may also have chain as an imprisonment. So, the symbolic meaning of an object or an action is understood by when, where, and how it is used. And it also depends on who reads the work. You may take out the meaning differently than the other person, or the poet who has used the symbol, you may take some other meaning out of that symbol. So, it has a varied usage while it is presented in literature also. Now we look at some common examples of symbolism in everyday life so as to get a more clear idea about what exactly is a symbol. Now this bird, the dove is used as a symbol of peace. Now to look at a red rose, this flower red rose has been for ages and centuries been used to denote the color red. But giving a red rose also symbolizes love or romance or attachment or affection. Then we have the color black. Black is a symbol that represents something evil or death or dark or damp, unpleasant. So we see we have different colors symbolizing different attributes and qualities in them. Then we have the symbol of a broken mirror. Now this may symbolize separation in relationships or in other things also. Now when we use these examples of symbols in sentences also, like we have this color green. He turned green when he found a wallet, or he found when he achieved something. So now here green color is actually often associated with greed and jealousy and money affairs. He gave a red rose to his wife on Valentine's Day. Now we are familiar with this kind of a usage of red rose as a symbol. Here it is a symbol of love. The army raised a white flag to negotiate. Now, during war, the color white symbolizes making peace with the enemy. But otherwise, in our daily lives, we also see the color white represents purity and life. Now, to develop symbolism in a literary work, a writer utilizes other figures of speech also, like metaphors, similes, and allegory as tools. Now, these can be taken as somewhat similar tools as a symbol. Symbol can be as a metaphor also, a simile also, an allegory also, but there are minor and subtle differences between these tools and figures of speech. Now, when we study the examples of symbolism, it is easy to find out which exactly is a symbol and which is a metaphor. For example, a very, very famous and popular symbol in English literature is an extract from the play As You Like It by William Shakespeare, in which this famous monologue, spoken by this character, all the world's a stage and all men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. Now, these lines are symbolic of the fact that men and women in the course of their lives perform different roles. They are all stage actors, they are players. Now, here a stage symbolizes actually the world. Here, Shakespeare is not just talking about the stage and actors in theatre and drama, no. He is symbolizing the stage as the whole world. And players are the symbols for human beings, that we are all playing our roles just as the theatre players play their roles on the stage. So this is how a writer successfully presents a symbol in his writing. Now, why is symbolism used? Before we look into some more examples of symbols in poetry, let's see why do we need to use symbolism in poetry or literature. Now, symbolism gives freedom to the writer to add more meanings, double levels of meanings to his work. One is the literal meaning, which is self-evident. For example, he is talking about the flower. We know he is talking about the flower. But then he also wants to show another meaning, the symbolic one, whose meaning is far more profound than the literal. So this meaning may be deeper, more subtle, more lofty, profound, more serious, more intense than the literal word that he has presented. Symbolism, therefore, gives universality to the characters and the themes of a piece of literature. It also evokes interest in readers as they find an opportunity to get an insight into the writer's mind on how he views the world and how he thinks of common objects and actions having broader implications. So we see it becomes very important, and it is like an important adornment in literature that the writer, apart from giving a literal sense to a word, has much more to say about that word or about the attribute of that word. Now, symbolism, as we discussed, can be presented through various forms. Now, here they can also be called the types of symbolism. A symbol can be a physical object, like we said, a flower or a house or home, anything. Or it can be a character. A character can also be symbolic of some features, some characteristics or some attributes, or even an event. Especially the religious events that we talk are symbolic of some morality or some message that they convey to the common reader or human beings. So let's see symbolism through physical objects. Most often, physical objects are used to symbolize an idea or concept as a way of pointing the reader towards some of the basic themes that work is dealing with. For example, the easiest example I can find is that a poet might write a poem about a flower dancing in the wind to convey a sense of innocence, harmony with nature, or sheer happiness. Now here we cannot move on without quoting William Wordsworth. We have daffodils, we have Lucy Gray. We have his poems on the trees and objects of nature. Although Lucy Gray is a character, it is not a physical object. But when we talk of daffodils, he shows them dancing in the wind, swaying in the wind, which connects him to the harmony of nature. So this is symbolism through the physical objects. Then symbolism through characters. Sometimes characters themselves can serve as symbols of a particular virtue or vice or of a political ideology. Now, as I mentioned, Lucy Gray by William Wordsworth is a symbol of innocence, beauty, of blending with nature, playing in nature. Another example, in Edmund Spenser's famous allegorical poem, The Fairy Queen, the female knight Britomart is a symbol of the values of chastity, restraint, traits which many 16th century readers held in high esteem. Then we also have symbolism through events. Events can also be shown as symbolic. For example, something happening to a character, something a character is doing himself, or something happening to a nation is symbolic of the development of peace or the degeneration of, for example, in the poem Wasteland, we have several symbols that are eventful, that are about events. Now here, for example, while a character's long wild hair might symbolize a period of youth or innocence, but a scene in which the character chops off his or her long hair might symbolize a loss of innocence, or the sacrifices people have to make in the process of becoming a mature adult with responsibilities. So while the act of cutting off the hair is neither an object or a character, it is an event, and it is a normal minor event, but it would still be called an example of symbolism. So we see how complex symbolism can be. Now, an important confusion that the students might fail to recognize or differentiate or make out is the difference between symbol and metaphor. Now, at the first glance, symbol and metaphor could be difficult to distinguish because both the devices imbue a text with meaning beyond its literal sense. And both these devices use one thing or one word or one concept to represent something else. But while I'll talk here about elaborately on what actually a metaphor is, so that the differentiation between two devices is clear. Now, metaphors compare two different things by stating that one thing is the other. For example, your eyes are heaven. So now this doesn't happen in symbolism, where the relationship between a symbol and what it represents is not stated explicitly, means it is not said so clearly, and one thing is not said to be the other thing. Instead, a symbol stands for or represents something else. Now, for example, here metaphor is your eyes are heaven. If we take a simile, we will say your eyes are like heaven, or your eyes are as heaven. But in this metaphor, your eyes are heaven. But if we take a symbol, we will just say your eyes. And the expression about the eyes or the way we define the eyes might imply that the eyes are like the heaven, might show, the description of the eyes might show that they have a heavenly look or a feel or an impact or an effect, but we will not be clear, we will not be direct or explicit in telling that your eyes are heaven. While in a metaphor, we are clear, we are direct, your eyes are heaven. Now, whereas, secondly, a metaphor is used to compare one thing to another based on a common shared characteristic. Symbols can but don't need to have characteristics in common with what they represent. Now, here in this point, what I want to say is that there is always a comparison of two objects in a metaphor. One is compared to another based on a common feature. For example, a rose is compared, a cheek or the beauty of a girl is compared to a cheek. Now they have a common, sorry, the beauty of a girl is compared to a rose. Now they have a common trait that they are beautiful or they are pink. But in symbol, you may not have the comparison of two objects, and you may not have that commonality, but you will only have one object which suggests that it has these attributes. Now, for instance, to make it more clear, let me quote an example from Annie Proulx's story, Brokeback Mountain, which ends with one character who is taking in the smell of a shirt that was once worn by his lost love. Now, this love is lost, but there is the shirt that was worn by the lost love. Now, this shirt doesn't have a common characteristic with the lover. The shirt is a shirt and the lover is a lover. There is nothing common between the shirt and the lover, but it symbolizes him only insofar as it belonged to him. Now, the shirt here is a symbol of the lover because it belonged to him, not because it has a common feature or an attribute as the lover. So we see there is a slight subtle difference between symbol and metaphor. Now when we look at the very popular examples of symbols in English poetry, we have P.B. Shelley's poem Ozymandias, which is a sonnet in which Shelley uses the story of an encounter with the decaying monument of Ozymandias to illustrate the point, the philosophy about the destructive power of nature, the fleetingness of man's political accomplishments, and the longevity of art. And these lines from this poem prove this. I met a traveller from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert." Now this entire poem is a symbol of the destructive power of nature, the transience of human life, and the eternity, the longevity of art. We have another example, a popular poem by the Indian poet Toru Dutt, Our Casuarina Tree. Now the title itself is symbolic, Our Casuarina Tree. The tree in this poem is actually symbolic of the reminiscences of the childhood of Toru Dutt. It was under this tree where poetess and her brother and sisters who were her best friends played in their childhood. Therefore, the tree holds a special place in the poetess's heart. Even when all of them have gone their separate ways, her brother and sister are not alive anymore, the casuarina tree stayed as it was. Therefore, it became a symbol of their everlasting friendship and became dearer in the eyes of the poetess. Then we have another example, the popular poem Night of the Scorpion by another important Indian poet, Nassim Ezekiel. Now here, the very interesting anecdote of a night when the narrator's mother was stung by a scorpion. Now in this poem, this scorpion again stands as a symbol of evil in the poem. When he says the peasants came like swarms of flies and buzzed the name of God 100 times to paralyze the evil one. So here the scorpion stands for, symbolizes the evil side of nature, the evil face of nature. So this is how we look at symbolism, and it has a variety of usages and forms in English literature as well as in all other literatures of the world. So I hope I am able to make this concept clear to all the students. Thank you for now.